What does it mean to not know something? Why do we continually try to fill the gaps that, like, we know will never be understood? I've always believed that we understand the world through telling stories about it. That's how we make sense of things. That's how we imagine things that aren't our current reality. Some of these stories are plausible, others are less so. I think it's plausible that aliens exist. I think it's less plausible that they helped build the pyramids. So, what is the story here? Lost labor? Maybe some red rimmed, tired eyes staring at the lost media? Or is the content that is the story, the narrative I wove that no one knows anymore? All right, maybe you say, well, Sophia, you know what it is. But, like, I don't. I mean, yeah, I could tell you the themes that I was going for, the topic of the video that I was creating. I could tell you what I talked about and probably even recreate some of the sentences pretty accurately. But I'm never going to be able to exactly recreate the word choices. I'm never going to exactly be able to parse together the clips that I had chosen and make the cuts line up the way that they did. And if I did, even if I did, that text is lost. And so even if I was able to remember it, you don't actually have any evidence that that's what existed. But I think it's true that just because the story is lost doesn't mean that there isn't meaning there. And I think that there are meanings there that would not have been there had I not lost that story. The fact that I chose not to recreate the same video, the the fact that I made the fumble to lose it in the first place, all of that stuff has meaning. I spent a lot of time thinking about the Library of Alexandria, mourning that, thinking about all the books, all of the knowledge, all of the information that we're never going to get to have. I also think about all the books I'm never going to get to read in my lifetime, or the movies I'm never going to watch, and the experiences I'm never going to have, the jobs and opportunities that I will never get to have, the lives that I will never live. There is tragedy in the unknowable, the constant yearning and reckoning that we're never going to be able to know what is behind the door. That is the one constant to unknowable pasts and futures. We mourn the lives of the people undocumented, the people whose lives were not considered worthy of being recorded in history books, and we mourn the futures of children miscarried and of jobs not offered. I was trying to do some research on the sort of rhetorical implications of what the unknown are, but honestly, I didn't find any good work on it, and I'm definitely not qualified to put a grounded analysis out of my ass, but it definitely fascinates me. And I did find, in fact, a narrative scholar that put it in words that helped me out a little bit. Quote, "The palpable unknown is a place where the narrative motor stops, where there is not only is no narrative, but no way for narrative to get in. As I described it above, it is a hole in the narrative that travels through it and stays in the mind afterward. To steal another oxymoron from Samuel Beckett, but this time to redeploy it. It is a, quote, moving pause. How we relate to it is the key aspect of fiction's, quote, mind work that I want to bring into focus, end quote. This sort of mind work is something that we as a species are refusing to give up, even though it's the defining trait of the discipline that the answers are unknowable, that they're unable to be found. The proof of this doggedness is the whole discipline of metaphysics. This doggedness also explains why suspense is such an effective means of getting our attention. And while there are so many like psychological explanations for why we continue to look for answers to things that are unanswerable, fundamentally, I think it is a paradox. And we know we cannot know, yet nothing stops our hunger to. Our wheels spin, running through endless possibilities and plausibilities to the point where an overabundance of interpretation imbues the narrative with its own kind of meaninglessness. We're constantly trying to bridge that gap that is burning a hole in our minds to the point where it's filled to the brim with so many things that the information is corrupted. But it's necessary because we need our narratives to connect in order to understand what is happening around us. We need our stories to make sense. That same scholar earlier in his book talked about how often, it is a pretty common literary trope. I think you know that a lot of people will imbue ambiguity into their stories intentionally and leave things mysterious, leave things unrevealed by the end. And the scholar was talking about how often the purest interpretations, purest is kind of an interesting take, but the purest interpretations of these narratives is to exercise restraint and not try to fill them, leave them blank. And that it's important to not choose the most plausible scenario, because in doing so, this sort of unknowable stature remains, and we're not deluding ourselves into the feeling that we have understood an unknowable thing, but rather accepted the unknowable as a feature of the narrative. So, I guess the only answer is, are you going to ask me what my video was about?